Hey tea heads, this is Don from Mayleaf. In this video, tea tasting, to slurp or not to slurp. In this video, I'm going to get ultra geeky and talk about the ways that you can discern the best flavor from tea, and specifically to talk about whether or not you should be slurping your tea. This video is going to go under the Tea Masterclasses playlist. If at any point in time you enjoy this video, then please give the video the thumbs up. The more thumbs in the air, the more tea videos are going to come your way. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, then go click that button. Okay, so how do you get the best out of your tea? I realize that everybody knows how to drink and everybody knows how to drink tea. But for those people that really want to try and extract the most amount of the volatile aromatics of the tea and to really start to get into a lot of detail in terms of the flavor of tea, I want to talk about the best way to drink tea, and specifically to talk about whether or not you should be slurping or not. So let's talk about slurping a little bit. There are two ways that most people slurp: from the cup to the mouth, like this. That's one way. The second way, which I've seen a lot in China, is they put the tea in the mouth and then they kind of vaporize the tea like this. Okay, so you've probably all seen people slurping tea. Certainly, ever since I started to get into tea 12 years ago, I've always seen people slurping tea, and I've copied that process and I've imitated that myself. But over the last few years, I've really been trying to work out whether or not the slurping actually improves flavor, what it does, and I've kind of spent a lot of time being very geeky about trying to analyze how best to extract the flavor of tea in your mouth and discern the different flavor profiles of a tea. So let's talk about why people slurp. I've looked online, I've spoken to a lot of people, and generally there are 4 reasons why people claim that slurping improves the flavor of the tea. The first is that it cools the tea down. So obviously if you have a very hot tea and you pour it into a cup, when you're slurping it, you're exposing it to lots of air and you're making the particles of the tea much smaller, so it will cool down. This is certainly true. Cooler tea is much easier to discern flavor rather than boiling hot tea. There's a lot of science in this. Temperature affects flavor. Why is it that, for example, ice cream is sweet when you eat it frozen, but when you allow it to go to room temperature, it tastes even sweeter? Is because the temperature change makes a big difference in how you discern flavor. I will be doing another video on this at some point in the future, but for now, what we can certainly say is that you can taste more with cooler tea. So that is definitely a valid point. However, if you're using small cups like this, one of the beauties of using small cups as opposed to big mugs is that the moment I pour from here, it's such a small volume, it will cool down quite quickly, and therefore it's not such a big deal. But certainly slurping does cool down your tea. The second thing that people say is that when you slurp your tea, you are somehow exposing the tea liquid to more parts of your tongue and your mouth. I don't believe this at all. I mean, if I drink this tea and I make it swish around in my mouth, I'm covering all the areas in my tongue and my mouth just as much as if I was vaporizing the tea through atomizing the tea through slurping. So I don't buy that one. That's not something that I believe to be true. The third thing that people say is that by oxygenating the tea, you are actually softening the tannins in the tea. So you're reducing the astringency, you're making a smoother tea, and you're making the tea more flavorful in terms of aromatics. I have a Longjing tea here. Let me just brew my second infusion here, because I have been experimenting with this, the geek that I am, and I've been trying to work out whether or not this is true, whether or not adding extra oxygen into the tea brew improves the flavor and improves the texture of the tea. So this is the experiment. I'm going to pour away this infusion here, and I'm going to take this lovely Longjing tea, you can see here, give you a little close-up of it. Nice Longjing tea. Make sure I'm focused. Okay, so I'm going to decant this from a low height into the Gongdao Bei. Okay, so what I have here are 2 glass cups. I'm going to pour half of this green tea into here, and I'm going to pour another half into here. Notice I'm pouring at a relatively low height, so I'm not introducing much oxygen in. So this is exactly the same brew, exactly the same tea. So now I'm going to take this tea here and pour it back into the Gongdao Bei, and then I'm going to just basically add oxygen to the tea by pulling it. This is something they do a lot in parts of the subcontinent with te tarik and other types of pulled tea. So what I'm doing is just basically creating a stream that allows for oxygen to be dissolved a little bit into the tea liquid. And I've only done that a couple of times, right? So I'm going to now pour again from quite a large height into here. Now, hopefully, what you're going to notice is a difference in the color between these two. So this was exactly the same tea, but just this one's been pulled a little bit. So let me just try and get this close to you and compare these flavors, these colors. Can you see that this one here is slightly lighter than this one here? This one has a bit more of a golden tinge to it than this one. I hope that you can see that. I certainly can see it visually here, and I've only pulled it a few times. So, what does that mean? That means that certainly, especially with unoxidized tea, adding oxygen changes the tea. There's no question. In color, there's a difference in the tea. And I've done this many, many times and tried it with different types of tea, and it always, especially with green tea, makes the tea darker, more golden. In other words, more oxygenated and therefore oxidized. So how does this affect flavor and texture? Well, there is a slight, very small flavor difference. With the tea that has been oxygenated, you get a little bit more of an oxidized taste. So it starts to move slightly towards a whiter tea, or if you imagine a green tea that's been allowed to sit for a little while, it just tastes a little bit rounder, a little bit nuttier, a little bit sweeter, but loses some of the fresher notes. And in terms of the texture, certainly with the oxygenated tea, there is a slight improvement in terms of the smoothness. So this one tastes more fresh, but is a little bit more brisk, whereas this one tastes a little bit rounder in terms of sweetness, in terms of nuttiness, and in terms of texture, it's slightly smoother. But the differences are very, very small. And remember, I've pulled this a few times. So when you're comparing it to slurping in the mouth, how much oxygen are you actually bringing into the tea? Are you going to really notice a difference? In my opinion, from all the tests that I've done in terms of blind tasting A and B, slurping does not really improve the texture or flavor of the tea. It just does so if you pull it lots and lots of times and you add a lot of oxygen in, then you will start to notice a difference. But even then, the difference is very, very small. So that is the third reason why people say you should slurp. The last reason, and probably the most used reason, is that slurping allows the volatile aromatics of the tea to escape the liquid, and therefore you are able to take in the aroma of the tea a lot more than if you don't slurp. My opinion on this is that is true. Absolutely, if you slurp the tea a little bit, if you create some agitation in your mouth, then some of the extra volatile aromatics do come out. And when you breathe out through your nose, you will pick up more of those aromatics than if you just drink flat and don't agitate the tea at all. However, the idea of doing this, where you quite aggressively create lots of small water particles, small tea particles in your mouth, I think does the absolute opposite. Despite what everybody says, I really, really don't think it helps at all. In fact, what it does is it just creates a lot of very fine water mist in your mouth. So when you breathe out through your nose, it actually covers and deadens the ability for you to pick up aromatics. And in fact, all you do is you get a kind of wet aromatics. So you lose a lot of the complexity because it just feels wet. So if I do this, I'm getting a lot of the humidity and the wetness of the tea, but not so much of the aromatics. So, in conclusion, I think that slurping, aggressive slurping, is not something that improves the flavor of the tea. I do think that some agitation is useful. So, this is how I drink tea. Now, I'm sure that there will be plenty of people that disagree with me, and you're most welcome to leave comments in the comments section below, but this is how I like to taste tea, okay? What I like to do, I'll talk it through and then you'll see me do it. What I like to do is I like to breathe out a little bit just before bringing the cup to my mouth. I like to smell a little bit of the liquor, and then I like to put some of the liquid in my mouth with a little bit of an agitating slurp, but nothing too much. All that does is it starts to break up the aromatics and just release a few more of the volatile chemicals in the tea. Then once it's in my mouth, I allow it to swish all around my tongue and the roof of my mouth, the palate, etc. And I may even kind of, it sounds a bit strange, but move my tongue around a little bit just to kind of flutter and keep that agitation going, but in a gentle way. And then, this is the key, breathe out through your nose. When you breathe out through your nose, you're passing all the volatile aromatics through your olfactory canal, through the channels here, and you are picking up the aroma in such an intense way compared to sniffing this way. After that, you swallow. Remember, taste buds don't just stop in your tongue. Your throat has the ability to taste as well. And after you've swallowed, breathe out through your nose again, just to pick up even more of those aromatics. So, let's give it a go. So, cheers. So, this for me is the best way to get the flavor out of the tea. It doesn't give me any of the kind of wetness and the humidity that slurping aggressively does, but it allows me to really taste the flavor of the tea and the aromatics of the tea. So why is it that people who do tea tasting are using little spoons and slurping really aggressively? I don't really know, but I have a theory that I read somewhere, and I think it's probably true, is that most of these tea tasters were tasting very, very strong black tea. Now remember, when tea tasters are tasting black tea, they're intentionally overbrewing the tea in order to bring out the good and the bad, so they can taste all the aromatics of the tea. So if you have 20 different super strong black teas in front of you, which are going to be very, very astringent, you don't want to allow the tea to really cover your tongue too much. Instead, you want to try and pick up the aroma of the tea through the volatiles. So you take a spoon and you briefly breathe in and atomize the tea. It creates all the aroma molecules in your mouth. Your tongue doesn't pick up too much of the tea. You're allowed to pick up the aroma of the tea, and then you can move on to the next one. Remember, they also tend to spit out the tea as well. Now, this is a particular style of tasting just to really kind of gather the flavor notes of 20 different teas, but it certainly isn't tea appreciation in the way that a tea should be appreciated. You should always swallow your tea because, as I said, the taste buds are also run down your throat as well, and the whole joy of gourmet tea tasting is the throat feel and the mouth feel and the texture and all of those things that you don't get when you slurp from a spoon. But I think the reason why they were slurping from the spoon is because they had very, very astringent black tea. You can't start to really swill all of that black tea around your tongue. It will make your tongue very, very astringent and very, very dry, and you won't be able to taste further on. I believe that this is the best way to drink your tea. Feel free to disagree. I would love to hear your comments on how you drink tea, but That's it for now. If you made it to the end of this video, then please give the video the thumbs up. Check out our playlists and let us know if there are any videos that you would like us to make. If you're ever in London, then come visit us in Camden to say hi and taste our wares. If you have any questions or comments, then fire them over. Other than that, I'm Don May from Mayleaf. Thank you for being a part of the revelation of true tea. Stay away from the tea bags, keep drinking the good stuff, and spread the word, because nobody deserves bad tea. Bye.